The first sensation was pain, which meant I wasn't dead. The second was confusion about whether being alive was actually preferable. My body felt like it had been disassembled and put back together by someone who'd lost the instruction manual halfway through. I opened my eyes to soft blue lighting that didn't burn, which was an improvement over the red emergency strobes that had been the last thing I'd seen before everything went dark. The ceiling above me was smooth, almost organic-looking, with patterns that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. "You're awake," a voice said, female, calm, with an accent I couldn't place. "Please don't try to sit up yet. Your body is still repairing." I turned my head, which took more effort than it should have, and saw her. She sat in a chair beside what I assumed was a bed, though it felt more like I was floating on something that perfectly contoured to my body. She looked human enough that my brain initially cataloged her as such, a woman in her late 20s maybe, with kind eyes and dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Then I noticed her ears. They extended up and back from her head, easily 5 or 6 inches long, tapering to elegant points. They moved slightly as she tilted her head to look at me, expressing something my human-trained brain couldn't quite interpret. "Where am I?" My voice came out as a croak. "Medical Station Sanctuary 7. You've been here for 6 days." She stood and moved to a panel beside the bed, adjusting something that made the pressure around my chest ease. "I'm Sierra. I've been assigned as your primary care provider." "Ethan," I managed. "Ethan Vale, what happened to my ship?" "Your ship is in our repair bay. You were suffering from acute radiation exposure and decompression trauma when we found you. Your distress beacon was still transmitting, fortunately." She picked up a device that looked like a tablet made of crystal and waved it over me. "Your cellular regeneration is progressing well, better than expected, actually. Human resilience is remarkable." I tried to piece together my last memories. The freight run to the mining outpost, the shortcut through the nebula that wasn't on any official charts, the power failure, the slow, creeping cold as life support failed, the certainty that I was going to die alone in the dark. "You saved my life," I said. "We saved your life," she corrected. "The Ilari don't leave travelers to die in space. It goes against everything we believe." She set the device down and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "You were talking in your sleep." My stomach dropped. "What?" "While you were unconscious, you talked quite a bit actually." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "It's normal. The mind processes trauma in various ways." What did I say? The question came out more urgently than I intended. Sierra's ears twitched, which I was beginning to suspect was equivalent to a human raising an eyebrow. "Nothing concerning medically. Your subconscious is quite verbal." She moved to check another piece of equipment. "You should rest now. Recovery requires sleep." "You're not going to tell me what I said." "Not yet." She dimmed the lights with a gesture. "Perhaps when you're stronger." I wanted to protest, but exhaustion pulled at me like gravity. As my eyes closed, I heard her settling back into the chair beside my bed, and my last conscious thought was wondering what secrets my sleeping self had revealed to this alien woman with the gentle voice and knowing smile. Sleep came, and with it, the vague anxiety that somewhere in my unconscious mind, I was still talking, still revealing things I'd never say while awake, and she was listening to every word. The next few days blurred together in a haze of medical procedures. I didn't understand, and slow, frustrating improvements in my physical condition. Sierra was a constant presence, checking my vitals with devices that hummed and glowed, adjusting medications that entered my system through patches that felt warm against my skin, explaining my condition in terms that were half medical jargon and half translations that didn't quite work. "Your mitochondrial function was compromised," she'd say, as if that meant something to a freight hauler whose medical knowledge ended at "put pressure on bleeding things." But I learned to read her. Her ears were incredibly expressive once I knew what to look for. They perked forward when she was interested, flattened slightly when she was concentrating, and did this little flutter thing when she was amused but trying to maintain professional composure. She did that flutter thing a lot around me. Other Ilari came and went, doctors I assumed, though their hierarchy wasn't clear. They all had those same elegant ears, though Sira's seemed more expressive than most. They spoke in their own language when they thought I wasn't paying attention, musical sounds that rose and fell like singing. They're talking about me, aren't they? I asked Sira during one of her evening checks. They're discussing your case, yes. What are they saying? That your recovery is unprecedented, that you're either very lucky or very stubborn. She adjusted something on the device monitoring my heart rate. Also that I spend more time in here than necessary for standard patient care. Do you? Her ears did that flutter thing. Medical protocols are flexible. Besides, you're our first human patient. Naturally, there's more to observe. Naturally, I echoed, watching her face for tells. And the talking in my sleep. Still doing that. Less frequently now. Your REM cycles are normalizing. She made a note on her crystal tablet. Though you had an interesting episode 2 nights ago. Oh God, what did I say? You were arguing with someone about proper cargo securing techniques, very passionate about tie-down procedures. Her expression remained neutral, but her ears betrayed her amusement. I relaxed slightly. That's not so bad. Then you started crying and said you missed your mother's cooking. She looked up from her tablet. Do all humans have such emotional relationships with food preparation? My face heated. That's private. You made it public by saying it aloud. But her tone was gentle, not mocking. We don't judge vulnerability here, Ethan. The Ilari believe that what emerges in unconsciousness is often more true than what we choose to show while awake. That's a terrifying philosophy. Or liberating. She moved to the window, viewport actually, and gazed out at the stars beyond. Your people guard yourselves so carefully. Even your body language is defensive. It must be exhausting. I didn't have an answer for that, mainly because she was right. I'd spent years building walls, perfecting the art of being alone even in crowded stations, of keeping conversations shallow and connections temporary. And apparently my unconscious mind had been spilling all of that to this alien nurse who listened with patience I didn't deserve. Why do you stay? I asked. The others do their checks and leave. You sit here even when I'm sleeping. Sira turned from the window and her ears were angled in a way I hadn't seen before, something between sad and fond. Because healing isn't just physical, and because... She hesitated, choosing words carefully. Because you said something that first night. Something that made me want to understand humans better. What did I say? That's between me and your unconscious mind. She smiled, for now. By day 8, I could sit up without the room spinning. By day 10, I was arguing with Sira about when I could try standing. By day 12, I was taking my first wobbly steps with her supporting most of my weight. Dignity is overrated, I muttered as I shuffled forward like a toddler. Dignity is rebuilt, Sira corrected, just like everything else. Her hands were firm on my arms, her body pressed against my side to keep me stable. She was warmer than I expected, her presence solid and reassuring. We made it 3 meters before my legs gave out. She guided me back to the bed with practiced ease, not even breathing hard despite supporting my full weight. You're stronger than you look, I observed. Ilari physiology, our muscle density is greater than human standard. She helped me settle back, adjusting pillows with efficient care. Also, you're not as heavy as you think. The radiation exposure caused significant muscle wasting. You've lost nearly 12 kilos. I looked down at myself, really looked, and saw she was right. I'd always been lean, but now I was gaunt, my body consumed by its own desperate attempt to survive. Attractive, I said sourly. You're alive. She pulled up a chair close enough that our knees almost touched. Aesthetic concerns are secondary to that fact. She paused, then added more quietly, though for what it's worth, you're recovering well. In a few weeks, you'll regain the lost mass. In a few weeks I should be gone, back to work. I've got contracts to fulfill. Something flickered across her face. You're not cleared for independent function yet. You still need supervision. But how much longer? That depends on several factors. Your physical recovery is progressing, but there are psychological considerations as well. She met my eyes directly. You nearly died alone in space, Ethan. That leaves marks that don't show on medical scans. I'm fine. You have nightmares every night. You wake up gasping, reaching for emergency oxygen that isn't there. Her voice was gentle but firm. That's not fine. How do you know about the nightmares? Because I'm here. She said it simply, as if her nightly vigil was the most natural thing in the world. Someone should be present when you wake up afraid, so you know you're not alone anymore. The weight of that statement settled over me. You stay all night. Not all night, but I check on you every few hours. It's not standard patient care, I finished. Your colleague said as much. Her ears flattened slightly, a sign I'd learned meant embarrassment. They don't understand. Don't understand what? She stood abruptly, moving to the viewport again. It seemed to be her refuge when conversations got uncomfortable. The Elari have a practice, she said to the stars. When we care for someone who's unconscious for extended periods, we listen to what they say. It helps us understand their pain, their needs, what they're fighting against internally. And what did I say that made you decide to adopt me as your special project? You said, she stopped, turned back to face me. Her expression was more open than I'd ever seen it, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. You said that you'd gotten used to silence, that you'd stopped expecting anyone to care whether you lived or died, that it was easier than being disappointed. Her ears drooped. And then, you apologized to no one in particular for being a burden by surviving. The words hit like a physical blow, mainly because I could absolutely imagine saying them, believing them. That's just depression talking, I tried to deflect. Space madness, oxygen deprivation. That's loneliness talking, Sierra corrected. And it's not madness. It's what happens when people are isolated too long, when they convince themselves that solitude is a choice rather than a wound. And you're what healing that wound. That's not your job. It's exactly my job. She moved closer, her eyes fierce. Healing isn't just repairing tissue and balancing chemistry. It's helping people remember they're worth saving, worth staying for, worth knowing. The intensity in her voice made me look away. You don't even know me. I know what you say when you think no one's listening. I know you dream about Earth, about rain, about a sister who stopped calling, about a job you took in space because it meant you didn't have to face being alone in crowds anymore. She sat back down, close enough that I could see gold flecks in her eyes. I know that 3 nights ago you said my name. My heart stuttered. What? You were dreaming, you said. Sierra understands, Sierra sees. Her ears trembled slightly. And I realized that you were right. I do see you, Ethan. And I don't want you to leave thinking that no one would notice your absence. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications neither of us seemed ready to name. Outside, a ship docked with a distant clang that reverberated through the station. I should go, Sierra said finally. You need rest, and I'm overstepping professional bounds. Wait, I reached for her hand without thinking. She froze, looking down at where our fingers touched. Thank you for listening, for staying, for giving a shit about a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, she said softly. Then she gently extracted her hand and left, her ears angled in a way that looked like regret. I lay back and stared at the shifting ceiling patterns, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in my chest. Gratitude, definitely. Embarrassment at my unconscious confessions. But underneath that, something more complicated. Something that felt like hope and terrified me because of it. That night I had the nightmare again. The cold, the darkness, the slow suffocation. But this time when I jerked awake gasping, Sierra was there. She didn't say anything, just placed a steady hand on my shoulder and waited until my breathing calmed. You stayed, I whispered. I stayed, she confirmed. Go back to sleep, Ethan. And somehow, with her presence solid and real beside me, I did. Physical therapy was humbling in ways that had nothing to do with my body's betrayal. Walking required Sierra's support, her arm around my waist, while mine draped across her shoulders. We'd shuffle through the corridors of the medical station, passing other Elari who'd nod politely or make comments in their musical language that consistently made Sierra's ears flatten with embarrassment. What do they keep saying? I asked during one of our sessions, after a pair of nurses had whispered something that made Sierra's face flush a deep purple. They're commenting on my devotion to duty, she said stiffly. That's not what it sounded like. They're saying I've become personally invested in your recovery, that I'm exhibiting. She searched for the word, bonding behaviors. Bonding behaviors. The Elari form deep connections with those we care for. It's natural part of our psychology, but there are protocols about maintaining appropriate distance with patients. She adjusted her grip on my waist, and I tried not to notice how well we fit together. I may be bending those protocols because I talked in my sleep, because you're lonely, and I understand loneliness better than I should. She guided me around a corner, her movements practiced and smooth. And because the things you said made me realize humans are more complex than I thought, more isolated despite being surrounded by billions of your kind. We reached the observation dome, my favorite destination during these walks. It was a transparent bubble extending from the station's side, offering 360-degree views of space. Sierra helped me to one of the benches built into the curve of the dome, and we sat together looking out at the nebula that had nearly killed me. It's beautiful from here, I admitted, when it's not actively trying to murder me. Most dangerous things are beautiful. Sierra's gaze was distant. The Elari have a saying, the sharpest thorns grow on the sweetest flowers. Poetic species aren't you. We're healers. Poetry helps people understand pain. She turned to look at me and her expression was serious. Ethan, what will you do when you're cleared for release? The question I'd been avoiding. Go back to work, I guess. I've got cargo contracts, shipping routes, bills to pay. Back to being alone in space. It's what I know. It doesn't have to be. She hesitated, then continued. The station could use a human consultant. Someone to help us understand human physiology, psychology. To act as a liaison for other human patients we might encounter. You want me to stay? I'm offering you options. But the way her ears angled forward betrayed more than professional interest. You said once, while sleeping, that you wished someone would give you a reason to stay somewhere, to stop running. You remember everything I said, don't you? Every word. She looked back out at the stars. Is that invasive, knowing your unconscious thoughts? I considered it. By all rights I should feel violated, exposed, but instead I felt seen. Understood in a way I'd never experienced while awake and armored. It's terrifying, I admitted, but also kind of relieving, like I don't have to explain myself because you already know the worst parts. I don't think they're the worst parts. She smiled slightly. The worst parts are the walls you build while awake, the careful distance you maintain, the way you apologize for taking up space. Is there anything I didn't tell you while unconscious? You didn't tell me whether you feel the same connection that I do. She looked at me directly, vulnerable and brave. That's something you have to say while awake. Before I could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Sierra was on her feet instantly, her ears swiveling to track the sound. Her communicator chirped with rapid-fire updates in her language. What's happening? I asked, standing with effort. Ship in distress, collision with debris field, they're requesting emergency docking. She was already moving toward the exit. I need to go, stay here. I'm coming with you. Ethan, you're not cleared. People are hurt. You need all the hands you can get. I grabbed the railing and pulled myself forward, even shaky human hands. She looked like she wanted to argue, but another alert chimed and she made a decision. Stay behind me. If you collapse, I'm dragging you back to bed. Deal. We moved through the corridors faster than I thought possible in my condition, Sierra practically carrying me when my legs threatened to give out. The docking bay was chaos, Elari medical teams prepping equipment, engineers preparing to receive a damaged vessel. The ship that limped into dock was small, a civilian transport with a hull breach and failing life support. 5 occupants, all human, all injured to varying degrees. The medical teams swarmed them with efficient precision. Triage Station 3, Sierra directed me. Monitor vitals, call out any critical changes. Can you do that? Yes, I can do that. She squeezed my hand briefly, then disappeared into the controlled chaos. I found myself at a station, monitoring a middle-aged woman with a concussion and possible internal bleeding. The Elari equipment was intuitive enough once I understood the color coding: green good, red bad, yellow somewhere in between. I worked for hours or maybe minutes. Time became fluid. I called out changes, helped transfer patients, did whatever small tasks I could manage. My body screamed at me, but I ignored it. People needed help. I could hurt later. When the immediate crisis passed and all 5 humans were stabilized, I realized I was shaking. Sierra materialized beside me, her face streaked with purple blood from a patient's wound. "You did well," she said. "I need to sit down." "You need to lie down." She guided me toward a bed, not mine, whatever was available. "Ethan, you pushed too hard." I helped. I was useful. "You were." She pressed me down onto the bed, her hands gentle but firm. "You were also reckless and stubborn and—" She stopped, her ears trembling. "You scared me." "I'm fine." "You're exhausted. Your vitals are all over the spectrum." "You could have." Her voice cracked. "After everything we did to save you, you nearly destroyed yourself trying to prove something." "I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was trying to help." "You were trying to show your worth, the resources we spent on you." Her eyes were wet, which I didn't know was possible for Elari. As if there was ever a question. As if you needed to earn the right to be cared for. The accusation hit home because she was right. Some part of me had absolutely been trying to justify my survival, to prove I wasn't just dead weight taking up space. "I don't know how to just receive care," I admitted quietly. "I don't know how to believe I'm worth it." Sierra sat on the edge of the bed, her hand finding mine. "Then learn. Let me teach you." Her thumb traced patterns on my palm. "Because you are worth it, Ethan Vale. Worth saving, worth knowing, worth staying for." "You really believe that?" "I know it." She lifted my hand and pressed it briefly to her forehead, an Elari gesture I didn't fully understand but felt the significance of. "So please stop trying to prove it and just be." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion. "Tell me again," I mumbled, sleep pulling at me. "What I said that first night, the thing that made you decide to care." "You said," her voice was soft, "meant only for me. You said you were tired of being invisible, that just once you wanted someone to see you completely, flaws and fears and all the messy parts, and choose to stay anyway. And you decided you wanted to be that someone." "I decided I already was." She squeezed my hand. "Sleep now, I'll be here when you wake." For once I didn't fight it. I let sleep take me, secure in the knowledge that Sierra was beside me, listening to whatever my unconscious mind wanted to say, and staying regardless. I woke to Sierra asleep in the chair beside my bed, her head tilted at an angle that would absolutely give her neck pain. Her ears were drooped in exhaustion, and there were still traces of purple blood on her uniform. She'd stayed, I realized. Stayed through her entire shift and beyond, watching over me while I slept off my reckless heroics. The observation struck me with unexpected force. This alien woman with patient eyes and expressive ears cared about me, not as a case study or an interesting patient, but as someone who mattered. Someone whose absence would leave a hole. I didn't know what to do with that. "Your staring is loud," Sierra murmured without opening her eyes. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." Your heart rate increased. The monitors alerted me. She straightened in the chair with a wince. "How do you feel?" Like I got hit by a cargo hauler, but alive. I paused, thanks to you again. Thanks to your stubborn refusal to die. She stood and stretched, her spine popping audibly. The humans from the transport ship are stable. They're asking about you, actually. Want to thank their fellow human who helped in their care. I didn't do much. You did enough. She moved to the viewport, her usual refuge. They also informed me their rescue beacon was received by a commercial vessel in the area. Help is coming to transport them home. Something in her tone made me sit up, and me. Your ship is repaired. You're physically capable of piloting, though I'd recommend another week of recovery. She didn't turn around. You're cleared for discharge whenever you choose. The words hung between us like a verdict. I was free to go. Back to my ship, my roots, my carefully constructed solitude. What if I don't choose? I asked. Her ears perked up, but she still didn't face me. What? You mentioned the station could use a human consultant. Is that offer still open? It was never not open. She turned then, and her expression was carefully neutral in a way that made my chest ache. But I won't manipulate you into staying out of some misplaced sense of gratitude. You don't owe me anything, Ethan. This isn't about owing you. Then what is it about? I swung my legs over the side of the bed, testing my weight. My body cooperated better than yesterday. You asked me once what I said while sleeping. All of it. Every embarrassing, vulnerable thing my unconscious mind spilled. You don't have to. I want to. I stood, steadier than expected, and crossed to where she stood. Because you're right. I am tired of being invisible. Tired of choosing isolation because it's safer than risking connection. I met her eyes. You've seen all my messy parts, Sierra. You've listened to my fears and loneliness and desperate wishes, and you're still here. Still offering me reasons to stay. I am, she agreed softly. So I'm choosing to stay. Not because I owe you, but because for the first time in years I actually want to. Want to learn about Ilari medicine and terrible station coffee and why your ears do that flutter thing when you're amused. I reached for her hand and she let me take it. Want to be somewhere I'm seen, where I matter to someone. Her ears trembled and tears traced down her cheeks, actual tears, which apparently Ilari could produce when sufficiently emotional. You've mattered since the moment we brought you aboard. Since I first heard you apologize for surviving and decided that someone needed to teach you better. You volunteered for that job. I insisted on it. She smiled through the tears. The moment I heard you talk about being alone in crowds, about choosing space because at least the isolation was honest there, I recognized something. Because I understand that loneliness, Ethan. I left my home world for similar reasons. Came to this station because healing others was easier than addressing my own isolation. We're quite a pair. We are, she squeezed my hand. So if you stay, know that it's not charity. I'm not saving you out of obligation. I'm asking you to stay because I don't want to be alone anymore either. I pulled her closer, and she came willingly. Her forehead resting against mine in that gesture I was beginning to understand meant trust, intimacy, connection. What will I do here? I asked, besides being professionally seen by an attractive alien nurse. Her ears did that flutter thing. Help establish human medical protocols. Teach us about your species' unique resilience and terrible sense of self-preservation. Make sure the coffee synthesizer is programmed correctly, because apparently humans have strong opinions about that. Important work. Vital, she agreed. Her arms circled my waist carefully, mindful of my still healing body. And when you're not working, you can spend time with someone who already knows your worst secrets and likes you anyway. Even knowing I dream about my mother's cooking. Especially knowing that it's humanizing. She pulled back enough to look at me properly. Though you should know, if you stay, the gossip among the medical staff will be insufferable. They've been watching us for days, making bets on whether you'd leave. What did you bet? That you'd stay. Her smile was radiant. I cheated, though. I knew what you said while sleeping. What was it, the thing that made you so sure? She touched my face gently, her fingers tracing my very human, very boring ear. You said, "I think I'm falling for my nurse. Is that allowed?" Then you laughed and said, "Probably not. But maybe this once, I'll do something just because I want to." Heat flooded my face. I said that out loud. 3 nights ago. You were dreaming about taking a walk through some garden on Earth, and I was there with you, and you were happy. Her ears angled forward, expressive and open. So yes, I was sure you'd stay, because part of you already made that choice. I kissed her then carefully, a question more than a statement. She answered by pulling me closer, her lips warm and her body solid against mine. It was gentle and tentative and perfect in its uncertainty. When we broke apart, she was smiling. "Welcome home, Ethan Vale." Is that what this is? Home? It's what you make it, but yes, I hope so. She took my hand and led me toward the viewport. "Come on, let me show you the quarters we've prepared. They're larger than standard with a workspace and a view." The other staff insisted. They said if you're staying, you should be comfortable. They did that before I decided. They were optimistic. Also, I may have mentioned that you'd probably stay if we gave you proper incentive. Manipulative. Effective, she corrected. We walked together through the corridors, and this time I didn't need her support. I was steady on my own feet, but chose to keep our hands linked anyway. The quarters were indeed spacious, with a viewport showing the nebula that had nearly killed me. It looked less threatening now, almost beautiful in its churning colors. "Thank you," I said, "for all of it. The medical care, the patience, the listening. Thank you for talking in your sleep." She moved to stand beside me at the viewport, and for staying awake to tell me the rest. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching ships come and go from the station, each one carrying people to and from their own destinations. I'd spent years on those ships, always moving, never settling. Always alone even when surrounded by others. Not anymore. Sierra's hand found mine again and her ears were angled in contentment. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I should probably call my sister. Let her know I'm alive and staying somewhere for a while. She'll be happy to hear from you. Maybe we haven't talked in 2 years." I squeezed her hand. "But I want to try. Want to stop running from connections, because they might disappoint me. That's growth." She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I realized how perfectly we fit together. "I'm proud of you. For making one phone call. For choosing to stay. For choosing connection over isolation. For letting yourself be seen." She looked up at me, her eyes warm. "For teaching me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we don't want to be alone anymore." Later, after Sierra had left to finish her shift, I sat in my new quarters and composed a message to my sister. It was awkward and stilted, full of apologies and explanations. But I sent it because Sierra was right. Being seen meant being vulnerable, and that meant reaching out even when it was terrifying. That night, for the first time since arriving at the station, I didn't have nightmares. I slept peacefully, and if I talked in my sleep, it was probably about Sierra and this strange new future I was choosing, one conscious word at a time. When I woke, there was a message waiting. My sister had responded. She wanted to talk, to catch up, to know where I was and whether I was okay. I smiled and started typing a response. I had so much to tell her. About nearly dying, about being saved, about the alien nurse who'd listened to my unconscious confessions and decided I was worth staying for. About choosing, for the first time in years, to be somewhere,